Welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Norman, your host. This is the Thanksgiving weekend. It's a little bit late in the season, certainly the sailing season. And we wanted to finish up our second year of Inside Great Lakes Sailing, coming down to the North Cape Yacht Club and spending some time with the University of Toledo club sailing team, who was very successful over the last couple of months, competing in the Kennedy Cup and finishing 7th place overall against some unbelievably talented sailing teams. But getting and earning the berth into the Kennedy Cup from winning a race in Chicago. And they're going to talk a little bit about their club and sailing and all that goes with it. I think you'll find it to be quite insightful. We're also going to spend a little bit of time with a great star sailor named Mark Struby, who is sort of commissioned to help put America's Cup Stars and Stripes boat from 1993 back in place after losing his mast last year. Stars and Stripes is a boat that's owned and operated and chartered in San Diego. And they're kind of an ambitious program to put it back into shape and into commission. And they're asking for some financial help. Turns out that revamping a boat of that level doesn't takes more than a Band-Aid. Mark will talk a little bit about that, and I think you'll enjoy it. We'll finish up our season next week with a couple of conversations with two of the most unforgettable characters that I've met this past year. And we'll deal with that towards the end of the show. But we hope you'll enjoy this show, talk a little bit about sailing as we have all put our boats away. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back with a real interesting trio from the University of Toledo.
We're talking with J.J. Miller, Carly Fraker, and Nate Sinclair. They are members of the University of Toledo Club sailing team who've won a number of honors. And I want to make this simple. We'll start right to left. Just introduce yourselves. You're J.J.?
Hi, my name is J.J. Miller. I'm a senior at the University of Toledo. I'm also the University of Toledo Sailing Club's current Commodore. I've been sailing since I was about 4 years old and spent a lifetime in the sport.
I'm Carly Fraker. I'm a junior at the University of Toledo. I've only been sailing for about 2 years, but I've risen to the rank of Vice Commodore of the University of Toledo Sailing Club, and ever since I started sailing, I've been hooked. I can't get away from it.
I'm Nathan Sinclair. I've been sailing all my life, but it was until college before I realized that I could race them. And I'm currently a senior in the College of Engineering.
Carly, your rise to Vice Commodore of the club in only 2 years says a lot, obviously, about your organizational skills. So we'll come back to that, because I really want to explore a little bit about your short time in the sport with the success you've had. So a couple of weeks ago, you guys were lucky enough to make the Toledo Blade. Sort of explain to me, JJ, we'll start with you. Sort of take me through what the club is, but let's start with the awards and what you guys have done recently, and then we can talk about the club and how it operates.
Yeah, so I think you'll find that those are going to be two very different yet interesting answers. Our club we're a small team on the scale of teams that we compete against in the MCSA, but we're a student-led organization, so these wins will take in a lot more effect than they would if we had a coach. So this year we won the Intercollegiate Offshore, or Great Lakes Intercollegiate Offshore Regatta in Chicago in the T10 class. I believe there were 18 tartan 10s total, and we were not winning the event at any point until the end. We kept our races consistent, and I think that was kind of a show for what we had to come. We were second at the U.S. Navy Small Keelboat Championships at U.S. Naval Academy. That was the first time we'd ever been there, prior to the Kennedy Cup, which is the event that we ended up in the Blade for. And that was a very stellar event for us because we'd never been there before. And so we went into that saying we didn't necessarily care how we were going to do. We were going to go out there and do the absolute best that we can, which has worked for us in the past. And going into the end of the first day, we were in third place. We had won the last race, and so we really had to just keep our mindset together for Sunday, knowing we were going to have tougher conditions and all the teams were going to go out there gunning for the front. And we just had a rougher day than we expected. We ended up finishing that in 7th place, but in the scale that we had never been to that event before, our placing didn't matter as much. That we went there and showed the teams what we were really capable of and what we did on such a limited scale in comparison to the other teams that were there.
Carly, there was an acronym that you started with an M. I want to make sure that that's the organization you sail. That's the sort of the overall. What is that acronym?
So the MCSA is the Midwest Collegiate Sailing Association, and that's the governing body of collegiate sailing here in the Midwest. And that's a subsection of the ICSA, which is the Intercollegiate Sailing Association, which is the governing body for all of national collegiate sailing.
The reason I'm asking the question is I want to be really clear that NCAA does or does not sponsor sail racing.
Does not.
This then becomes that body to oversee collegiate racing across the country.
Yep.
The reason I'm doing the inside baseball, so if you're watching this, you'll understand kind of where it fits. So if you're looking at the University of Toledo football team versus maybe looking at their travel lacrosse team as an example, that it kind of fits. You can have a great experience on a club program because obviously you guys are traveling all the way to Annapolis. Explain then, when you go to a race, a bunch of college kids, it's hard to afford a tartan 10 at 15 or 20 grand. So kind of explain how the race works when you show up. It's sort of like an IROC race for cars. Am I not mistaken? When you show up, there's already boats available.
Yeah, so when we go to an event such as when we went to Great Lakes Intercollegiate in Chicago or regular intercollegiate in Larchmont, you arrive on Friday, you register your team, and they assign you a boat and a boat owner to get in contact with. And that boat owner graciously volunteers their boat and their sails and all of their equipment for the boat for the whole weekend for us to use. And they're on board. They direct us safety, and they have local knowledge of the waters. That way we don't get stuck on a shoal or something in Long Island Sound. So we meet up with our boat owner, and he shows us the ropes of his boat, and then he kind of sits back and lets us race it to the best of our ability. And that's how it works.
Nate, as she's explaining about boat owners, I'm a guy, I'll give you my boat, there's a guy on board. I got to believe there's as many personalities to boat owners as there might be people lending boats. When you guys worked with, whatever you worked with, the boat owner, you're smiling because you know what question's coming. How involved do they get? Or is it like a parent at a Little League game? Or is it more, is it a little less? You answer first,
Sure.
And I think JJ's got an anecdote to that.
It very much is moderated by the race runners. So
What's
in
a
the
race
past,
runner?
The people or the governing committee running the race.
Okay.
So in the past, it was just the boat owner on the boat, and then all of these college kids. And so if they didn't like something, they couldn't really do anything. It wasn't as hands-on unless it was like a dire situation.
Right.
But this year, at least for the Great Lakes Intercollegiate Offshore Regatta, they also had another regular crew on the boat that was fully hands-on, that could help or assist or just be an extra set of hands that knew the boat. But as far as personalities go, this sport is in no way short of those. And so boats, everybody likes their boat a different way.
Right.
And so one of the factors that we constantly deal with on sailing other people's boats is how they like it put together, raced, and put away, especially. And so at the Naval Academy, everything for those boats is regimented in book-long instructions. And so whether it's the way you dock and undock or the way you flake the mainsail as it comes down, we learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
As we flaked our mainsail, I think 4 times in a row just to get it right, because they are so particular.
Right. Would a sail pack just fix that? I put a sail pack on this year, and I just drop it down in, and it works just fine. You know what I'm saying?
I think we'll ask them about that.
Yeah. So you're suggesting then that there's a little bit of Little League dad at some of the boat owners? JJ, you were smiling,
Yeah,
so there's got to be some comment.
Well, with the forsakenness of political correctness, we had a boat owner that his heart was completely in the right place. The boat owner that you want to have is a boat owner that shows up, sees the team, and says, okay, I want them to do well. I want to help them do well. And while I believe we had that with our boat owner, we had some things that just we kind of tended to butt heads on. And like Nate said, we have our own keel boats. We race on Wednesday nights every single Wednesday on big 30-plus foot race boats. We have a Santana 35 and a Hobie 33. This is not uncharted territory for us. And so when we go to set the kite up, for example, on this boat, we tried to bring the kite to the bow and launch it from the rail. And the guy was not having it. He said, that's not how you do it on this boat. You're not going to do it that way on this boat. You're going to leave that kite in the companionway and launch from the companionway. Now, is that doable? Sure. Is it a weird thing to have to do around his request? Yeah. But, in that case, there's nothing you can do. It's his boat. He's allowed it to be there. He's volunteered you to use this boat. You're not going to say, no, that's the way I'm going to do it. It's not your boat. It's not your place. And so, there were situations like that where we just work around whatever, the issue happened to have been, because we can sail around those things.
I would think a good owner would be almost a home field advantage over some persnickety guy that was, maybe a little more demanding from that standpoint. So I would think that 10 or 15% of the race itself just is based on the guys you're racing with and the boat you pick. And how do they? Is it a blind draw to pick a boat, or you get lucky, or?
So I believe it's picked by the regatta organizers, and that I think is due to there are teams that have alumni that have boats there.
Right.
So you're liable to have an MSU team on an MSU alum's boat. Well, however it happened, we usually ended up with boats that weren't in the best shape, whether the bottoms weren't cleaned or we were using 15-year-old sails. However it happened, it was interesting at GLIOR because in the fleet of Tartan 10s, we had done our homework to see the boat that we had gotten, how it had done in relation to the other T10s in Chicago. And we found that this boat luckily would crack 10 occasionally. You'd see 8 and 10th place finishes, but you weren't seeing in the inshore stuff anything above 5. And so we were like, okay, well, we'll just take that as a grain of salt and see what we do when we get there. And sure enough, we got there, and out of these fleet of 18 boats, you'd have boats that were equipped with brand new sails that had fair keels that were just put in the water for this event. And we went out and disproved that it was really going to be the boat because we won the event beating all these extremely, extremely well set up boats. And as a primary example of that, I know that a boat that broke a boom out there due to sailorability was one of the nicest Tartan 10s in Chicago. So the boat quality doesn't always reflect the quality of the team on the boat.
Fair enough. Carly, Tartan 10s in Chicago. What did you sail in Annapolis?
So we went to Annapolis twice. First time in Annapolis, we sailed a Colgate 26, which at the Naval Academy they call Navy 26s because they have a little thicker hull and
Can't call them
design
Colgates if you're an Annapolis guy. No,
Yeah.
I get that.
But then for Kennedy Cup, we sailed the Navy's custom sailing boat, a Navy 44. And those are big, beautiful boats. I believe they're a Sparkman and Stevens original design, and every 20 or 30 years they have them rebuilt by another boat manufacturer on the East Coast. So they're meticulously kept. They're beautiful.
And I'm curious, with this owner that had the boat you guys were on, does the relationship when you get off the boat end in hugs or in flipping them the bird? Exaggeration, but you get my point.
Yeah, I know in past years for the Naval Academy specifically, it's a different setup since the Academy does on the boats, but we always try to make a point of making a great connection with the boat owner. Not only to be cordial, because it is a very large privilege to be on somebody else's boat essentially for free, but also in the hopes that we'll make the connection for the next year and then sort of build the relationship as a team. And for our boat owner at Galera this year, for example, he's very interested in any alum from our club that might come to Chicago. He would be happy to have them or help find them a boat, should that ever be a necessity.
When you go to, let's talk about the Kennedy Cup specifically. A trophy named after John F. Kennedy, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Carly, just tell us briefly the history on that.
So the Kennedy Cup is a collegiate offshore sailing regatta. It's technically the national championships for the ICSA, which we spoke about earlier. And that cup was designated to the Naval Academy by the Kennedy family and is used as an award for the top team in that event. So I think it dates back, this was the 56th year that this regatta has run. So it dates way, way back.
do teams from other places recognize that Toledo's on a Great Lake? And do they look at you like you're from the University of Toledo? You know, it's sort of like a Jamaican bobsled team, kind of the same approach.
They look at us, we're like, Toledo? Where's Toledo? And we're like, Ohio. And they're like, well, where do you guys sail? Who sails in Ohio? We're like, the Great Lakes. But when you mentioned Jamaican bobsled team, that was actually a joke we had when we were there, because everyone's looking at us like College of Charleston or University of Rhode Island is like, University of Toledo? Oh, they'll be easy to beat. We don't have to worry about them. And because they show up in their designated team vans labeled with College of Charleston sailing, and we show up on our Volkswagens, and it's really funny. They look at us and they're like, oh, we don't need to worry about them. So it's I don't know how to say it. It's just an odd kind of dynamic.
An underdog.
Yeah. But we were definitely the Jamaican bobsled team. We felt like the little kids here, just really glad to be here. Whatever happens, happens. Just really thankful to have the experience. But we ended up proving otherwise, that we weren't the Jamaican bobsled team. We actually ended up winning one of the races on Saturday. We took first in the very last race of the day, and I think it kind of showed a lot of the other teams like, oh, okay, Toledo is not something to be brushed off your shoulder. We got to worry about those guys.
I use this anecdote a lot. We used to talk about ski racing in Michigan, and you'd have 300 vertical feet. You'd send your kids out west to compete in their championships, and we would be competitive for the first half of the race. Mm-hmm. But the bottom of the race, kids were never used to ski. They'd ski 50 gates instead of skiing 90 gates. Mm-hmm. Well, we started going out west, and all of a sudden we start winning. Well, same opportunity. When you put the opportunity to be equal and every sort of, equalize the playing field, it takes a whole nother direction. JJ, talk a little bit about the crew. How many on the boat for Kennedy Cup? And then talk about you. I'm assuming as the Commodore, you're also the skipper.
Yes.
Do you have the most extensive background in sailing in the group? So talk a little bit about how you take a second year. Nate, how long have you been sailing?
Racing for 2-3 years now.
Okay. So in your case, you've been racing since you're a younger guy. Talk a little bit about the crew and a club and how you kind of blend all that as Commodore.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I think makes this such a magnificent story for me is, although I spent a lifetime in it, and I've been doing this a long time, I love it. I've done so many awesome races, and I have built that experience over a sailing career. What's amazing about the people on this team that went to this event is our team at the University of Toledo, you don't have to have prior experience to sail. You don't have to have prior experience to be on the team. Most of our team members have started racing, if not sailing, in college. And so one of the team members who unfortunately couldn't make it today is named Shelby Lovell. What's amazing about Shelby's story is that she didn't start sailing till about 6 months ago. And so to watch a person that only 6 months ago I had known, who went to a high school near where I graduated high school, is now sailing on our team to the point that she's cranking a spinnaker halyard up on a Navy 44 in Annapolis. That's something to bring tears of joy to your eyes, because you're seeing people blossom not only into a sport that they can sail for a lifetime, but doing such an amazing job doing so. And that can be followed all the way down our team. Our alumni advisor started in college. She started in college. He has been sailing before, but started racing in college. And so that's the really impressive part of this, is every other team on the water is, and I don't say this egotistically, but it's a boat full of me's. They're guys that have been sailing since 4 years old. They're guys that have sailed on all these teams, that have been to all these events, that have done all these different racing, all these different places. But that wasn't the case with our team, and we just overcame a skill barrier in a sense.
If experience matters in sport, and I think you'd agree that it does, how do you overcome the barrier when you're sailing against folks that are clearly more experienced than what you guys are?
I think one of the ways that we do that is, even in our short periods of time that you see these people come into racing, we're pretty aggressive with it. This year we actually took a boat full of college sailors and did the Port Huron Mackinac race. We usually take all college sailors and do the Mills Trophy race, and we've done things like that in the past. And so we bridge the big boat gap a lot quicker. And so I don't think we're lacking as much experience, even though the shorter period of time, but especially in the Navy 44s, I found it true that the drive and the want to be there was extremely powerful. In a boat, equivocally powerful. You had to want to be there and had to want to put in the effort, and that boat took everything you had to give.
And a 44, that boat, you got to have some skill, because and you mentioned that there's a couple of races where wind was blowing pretty good. You can't fake it with big wind in a 44 on a large body of water. You know how to sail the boat.
Yeah.
Well, you're smiling, but I'm right, because it's not about reefing. It's about making sure that it's it's in the right way. So the question to two of you, you've got an athletic background. You were involved in track as a discus and a shot putter earlier on. Field hockey, I think.
Yeah, field hockey.
Do the sports cross over? Does there some analogy? And then let me add to that same question. What kind of Commodore? What kind of skipper was this? A dictatorial kind of guy that Captain Bligh, or was he much more? We've all had stories about skippers that we've sailed with. Some guys you want to throw overboard. So maybe talk to that a little bit.
So, JJ was a really good skipper. I mean, he's really communicative. We make a lot of decisions together as a team. I mean, there's always times when you got to make the last call at the last second and everyone's like, what's going on? What are you doing? But I mean, at the end you see how it pans out and what ends up happening. But coming from an athletic background to sailing, I don't know if the sport itself overlaps to sailing, but definitely just the physical fitness, being strong, knowing how to use your body to move. I was the jib trimmer and spinnaker trimmer on a Navy 44, and at the end of the day, I thought my arms were going to fall off. It's huge sheets, huge guys, and it takes everything out of you.
It makes no difference. Nobody wants to be on the foredeck. I mean, I get that. So that's the nature of whether you're sailing, small boat, large boat, 60 foot, whatever. Nate, how about you?
I would disagree. I love to be on the foredeck.
Okay.
And that's where I was for the Kennedy Cup. And so, as far as speaking on the skipper goes, there is a filter that we installed at the mast. So not everything that he says makes it all the way up to me.
Okay.
But I know that I'm 44 feet away from this man.
Okay. Gotcha.
So there has to be a certain level of trust that I put into the guy steering the boat 44 feet away from me.
Right.
And I know that without a shadow of a doubt, I'm going to be safe to do my job up there. I'm not going to, even if we have to crash tack, I'm at least going to get some sort of warning. But ultimately, I can put my trust in what's happening behind me so I can focus on the job in front of me. And it was the same way with the group of people we had on the foredeck and in the pit. It was I felt a very strong and cohesive team that was put together at the race. And so in the same way, we could all do our own task and do that better because we could rely on the few people around us. As far as applicability to sports, though, I think for me, I played soccer, I ran track. It's just the mental fortitude of I am dead tired, all of my body hurts, head to toe, but there's a goal to achieve here, and we need to keep going so that we can achieve that.
Working the foredeck, the thing that hit my head was selective listening. Is that part of the foredeck's skill, being able to have selective listening?
Maybe not directly, but it's something that I think every foredeck picks up after a while. But I also know that my skipper trusts me to make decisions in a timely manner, effectively, in the same way that I trust him. It's a two-way street. I've
always argued that the reason it's sailors, not college guys, you may be 21, but I think the reason they drink so much is they got to forget what happened on the boat. I'm a firm believer that's why most yacht clubs have bars, because they know that there's only a selective group of people in the club that are going to sail with them, and it's going to be the same guy next week. So it's like a family, right?
Yeah.
It's from that standpoint. Point the finger back a little bit. What do you think your skills as a skipper are?
I think my skills as a skipper usually have to come in the most crucial moments. We had a lot of times at Kennedy Cup where one thing of note is that we have a safety officer from the U.S. Naval Academy, and his direction is in any point that he's not comfortable with anything going on that boat, he's to jump in. And so we had to keep him in the loop a lot of times. And when we were having port starboard crossings or our starting line with 10 Navy 44s on it. And so making the decisions maximized, I think, is one of my other talents. Is we're not, it's a Navy 44. It weighs 30,000 pounds. It's like racing a rhinoceros. You can't go, crash tack it upwind like a fin or a laser or some sort of equivalent dinghy. You have to think ahead. You have to decide where you want to be on a start line, decide how you're going to get upwind, and use your maximum 3 or 4 tacks. And so you're in the long game already going upwind before you've even crossed the start line. And so I think that's what helps me a lot, is the ability to think ahead and kind of make decisions based on making the most out of that maneuver.
What's the university? Is the university reached out at all as far as they done some things to recognize this win and this opportunity?
No.
No.
Okay.
No.
And that's not a bad thing. It's we were talking earlier before the interview about club sports. Sometimes they get lost at the universities within the athletic department. And in a lot of cases, club teams aren't even operated through the athletic department. They usually go to the rec department,
Yep.
where you have intramurals. So it's a function, and I get that. Just curious, in majors at UT, what's your major?
I'm an accounting and finance major.
I'm a civil and environmental engineering dual major.
Chemical and environmental engineering, dual major.
Okay. Will you be sailing when you're 25, 30, and 35?
Absolutely.
It better be.
Okay, so I'll ask the simplest of questions. What do you love about sailing?
For me, what I think special about it is, even though I primarily race and my goal has always been to win as many races as possible, what's special about sailing to me is that it's a sport that you can't age out of. There's not a top. If you played baseball like I did, you're going to maybe play in high school if you're pretty good. If you're really good, you'll go to college, but you're not going to go to the MLB. It's a nice way of putting it. But sailing, there's no way to age out. And I'll be the first to admit that I've been whipped by 80-year-old women in the Thistle class, because sailing doesn't care about your color, your gender, your age. It's just about you connecting with the boat. And that's what's special to me about it, is you can do it anywhere in the world and you can't ever age out of it.
He's a longtime sailor. Do you feel the same way?
So
I go back to the original question. What do you love about sailing? Because you're new to it.
yeah, so he has all those experiences to compare it to. I like sailing that it's basically an endless opportunity to go anywhere and do anything. And there's a sense of accomplishment you get when you go from point A to point B, or you race around a course, and it's just the wind and the water and the physical ability of the crew. You can hop in a powerboat and go from point A to point B, or there's powerboat races, but the sense of accomplishment of being able to do that without an engine, just based on the environment and the people on your boat, there's nothing like it.
Nate?
I mean, in my mind, sure, this is one of the oldest competitive sports in the world, and with some of the longest running trophies, but in my everyday sailing life, I really like puzzles. And so in the foredeck, I see it as one large system of puzzles.
Okay.
And so the thing that really keeps me coming back and keeps me up at night, frankly, is how can I do it better next time? The continual improvement.
So you think like an engineer. Does that help or hurt sailing? Is it a sport or is it an art?
I think it is one of the perfect embodiments of both.
Okay.
At the same time. And so like you get those beautiful views of just like 3 Navy 44s just all on each other, just going. These are giant, fully loaded, like.
Do you appreciate as an engineer, you were talking about all the very specifics about how a boat's rigged, as an example.
Yeah.
Do you appreciate as an engineer, maybe like I don't, I'll grab the stay and just kind of give it that, well, that's okay. Somebody will come along and put a calibrator on it and I'm 3/10 off or something. I don't care. I'm just sailing my boat, right?
Yeah.
My point to it is this, to those dimensions, is that something that really influences?
I'm not sure I would say I'm at the level of skill that can appreciate that yet.
Okay.
But I see the beauty in having a system that works and that works well and that is foolproof.
I would think as a skipper, analytical minds, to engineers, that's gotta be, versus a left brain, kind of like me, a left brain guy who just sort of floats, as it were. You're just happy sailing on the right tack and you just, you know what I'm saying? Does that make a difference?
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, because if you were to take a analysis of the same of the majors of people on our team, I have a running joke for me that I'm surrounded by engineers. Most of our teams, a lot of them are dual major engineers, and so I think they do see it in a different way than I do. While I think I could see the analytical connections, and I've done a lot of rig tuning and I see a lot of imperfections when I get on a boat, I'm attracted to the same level of beauty and just the sereneness of being outside. It's awesome.
Do the teams that didn't win, the ones with the vans and all of the, the things that they brought to the table, did they look at you guys with kind of jaundiced eye when you won, or was it more of a collaborative, boy, that's really cool, and was really supportive in that process?
So it was kind of two different reactions from different regattas. When we won Glior, it's a lot of other Midwest schools like us who come from the small schools, who sail on the little lakes, who race Wednesday nights with their friends and their parents. And they're all rallying behind us, so excited to see another school like them succeeding. But when we go out east and we sail at IOR in Larchmont, or we sail Kennedy Cup in Annapolis, and it's these other big schools, and they see us beating them and doing better than them, I think they kind of hang their heads a little bit, and they think like, oh man, what are we doing wrong that we got beat by Toledo? Because we came in 7th, so out of the 10 schools that were there, we beat 3 of them. So I think we ended up beating Michigan, College of Charleston, and then UC San Diego. And those are all big schools with big programs, and I think they were kind of disappointed to see Toledo higher on the final results than they were.
Well, if you watch the show, you're not any. I'm a Spartan, so when you beat Michigan, it's just I'll throw a party just for that. But
Well, that was our goal when we went there.
That's
We're
a side party.
If we go to Kennedy, our one goal is we just have to beat Michigan.
Yeah, no,
so,
and God bless you for that. That's a terrific thing. We're at North Cape Yacht Club in front of the fireplace. We would have been looking out onto the lake, but it's backlit, so that's the reason we're sitting here. We can see your faces. North Cape is your home facility where you guys sail out of, am I correct?
Yep.
Talk a little bit about here and about the support that a club like this gives you, and that's got to be a plus too.
Yeah, so I actually moved up to North Cape from Port Clinton Yacht Club, where I originally started sailing in Ohio. One of the things that really attracted me here was I've always been into keelboats. I love keelboat sailing. I've done a fair bit of dinghies, but this club has absolutely everything you could ever want as a sailor. You have a wonderful beach to launch dinghies off of. You have a floating dock to launch dinghies off of. You have a crane that's capable of lifting a Hobie 33. You've got a huge well of docks and just an amazing level of boats that go out on Wednesday night and weekends. And a little interesting fact about this club was that it was founded in relation to getting away from politics of Toledo Yacht Club. This club was founded on a principle of promotion of sailboat racing. And that's what I really love about it, because that's my goal, is to race as much as possible, and this club allows me to do that.
So I'm new to this, and I haven't been around the club a whole lot, but I enjoy how everyone here, when we come back, they're like, oh, how'd Toledo do? It's a nice support group standing behind us. We post on our Facebook page of articles of Toledo, and we give summaries, and you wait 20 minutes and there's 24 comments of people from basically just this club who are cheering us on and standing behind us.
We've had the good fortune of interviewing Dennis Conner and Peter Eisler and Dave Perry, serious people in the sport. The Great Lakes, and I've made this point a number of times, the Great Lakes has some phenomenal sail racers. And if you look at Bayview, if you look at some of the clubs at Chicago, there's as many world-class sailors at North Cape as there might be anywhere. If you look at Skip Diebel, you look at Anna, look at some of the folks that are here. There's some serious talent, Nate. I mean, you guys can grow from that, but I would think the membership would have being someplace where you're not a nuisance and you come in and they're accepting. It's got to be a better than, hey, we forgot to cut the grass out there, so go play in soccer and 4 feet of grass. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. North Cape is just constantly welcoming. I mean, we spend our summers here doing normal keelboat regattas, but then it's one thing to do something at the club that benefits the club, but for us to go away and then still be with us, be supporting us, that really means a lot as someone
Okay.
Yeah.
Last couple questions. Seniors, juniors, sophomores?
I am technically a senior. I should be graduating next semester, I believe, and then I'm headed on to law school.
Is there redshirting in sail racing and club sports so you can come back if you're still at law school?
So actually, we lost 2020 to COVID, And our governing body has put in a regulation that says if you continue with a graduate degree or a higher education degree at the school where you did your undergrad, you can have a year back if you lost a year to COVID. So
You guys where are you in class?
I have 2 semesters left.
I'm a junior. I call it a junior and a half because I did this extra long co-op and then I added a extra major. So I'm like halfway through my junior year, but I still have like more junior to go.
Right.
So I'll be able to use all of my 4 years of eligibility before I graduate, which I don't think is going to be until August of 2023.
I'm asking the question because will this be the crew next year? That's up in the air. I understand this is only November.
Yeah.
But is it possible the crew could be back next year?
yeah, I don't think we lost anybody directly this season, did we? So
No, we lost a couple of people last season.
yeah, but not this season. So in theory, it could be. Yeah.
So
And-
this is absolutely last. This goes back to my last question. In your minds at this point, if you do stay together, is it harder to repeat because you don't know that, or harder to win? At least in your minds at this point, because that's got to be a conversation with when you guys talk.
I think I don't know if gaining or losing people is really going to help us or hinder us at all.
Okay.
He's basically our coach. He teaches us everything. It's his boat that we sail on Wednesday nights. It's his boat that we raced for the long distance races. So we have the ability to take anyone of any skill level and teach them how to race. I think the biggest issue is just team communication and the mindset and how we meld together and work together, which is what we work on Wednesday nights all summer long, working together in a race. But we're actually I think we're going to get some new kids coming up from high school sailing in the Cleveland and Detroit area who are into dinghy sailing who we can convert to keelboat sailors, and they'll be able to help us a lot.
I think I've asked it twice now. This is the last question, but this, in fact, is the last question. Cruising or racing?
Racing.
Easily racing.
Okay. That seems to be the standard answer. There's cruisers and there's racers, and they don't mix in the same part of the bar. So, listen, congratulations on what I think is a terrific win.
Wanted to thank JJ and Carly and Nate for talking a little bit about the club sport, kind of explaining how it works and all of their success. They've been instrumental in providing the Midwest some great representation both out in Chicago and certainly in Annapolis, and going up against the likes of the University of Michigan and Charleston and a variety of schools that are really, really good at sailing. And Toledo was pretty successful this year, so we wish them the best of luck. Up next is Mark Struby talking about Stars and Stripes. We'll be back in a second. We're talking with renowned sailor Mark Struby, who is out in San Diego, and we're talking to him on a kind of a unique discussion. Mark, you're kind of spearheading a fundraising program to get Stars and Stripes, the old Dennis Conner boat, back up on its feet. And I want to kind of go through the whole discussion. And part of it, as you can see behind me, last year they lost its mast, and it was in the 92 America's Cup. Am I correct?
Yes.
And I guess maybe just kind of get us going. You're raising money to put the boat back on the water. What happened?
Well, first of all, Lynn and B. Hanna are the owners of USA 11, the Stars and Stripes, and Il Moro America's Cup boats. But it wasn't them that started. It was actually the crew. It was a few guys that were on the crew of the boat that started the fundraiser. So I saw it on Facebook and I just shared it. And I've gotten some conversation going on Facebook. But I didn't know that they were going to do this. Lynn and B didn't know that they were going to do this. The guys just the crew took it on their own to get this started. So, yeah.
It has quite a history. This boat has been through. I mean, it really is a premier American boat, and I think it. So, kind of explain how it started, maybe campaigned it, and kind of bring us up to date, because it was Connor's boat in '92.
Yeah, so Dennis had this one in '92, and it's a very unique boat. I've got the drawings behind me here, but a lot of boats, when they put them together, they put the keel into a cassette, and you've got a thwartship bolts that kind of hold it from falling out. You've got some flange bolts that keep it together. This boat has a sort of a box. It's a keel box that's up here. And on the top of this, I don't know how big it is or small it is, but you could take this fin and you could move it 30 inches in either direction. So on the bottom of it, it's got an aluminum plate that the keel slides up into. And then on the top of the plate, There's four, probably, I don't know exactly, 1.5 2-inch bolts that go in. And on the front two, there was a strop that got attached, and that's how they lifted the boat up. So there's a little hatch in the cockpit, and they brought it up. So the boat is, it's a unique one. It was, like you said, it sailed in the 1992 Cup here in San Diego against Il Moro, which is one of their other boats. So they also own ITA 16, which is, back then, the Italians and, they built 5 of these boats, right? They built 5 America's Cup boats and they raced them against and figure out which one was the fastest one. So the Il Moro 16 wasn't the one that was actually in the Cup, but it was about their second fastest boat.
What was the uniqueness of that boat design that was unique for the particular year? The keel design?
For this one, yeah, it was Dennis. I can't remember if he built 1 or 2 boats that year, but they just wanted to have the option of moving the keel forward, potentially for light air, maybe back and heavy air. And the mast, also the chain plates on this have pins that go fore and aft, so you could place the shrouds in different locations. So it's not like, the newer boats have V straps that come down and everything kind of gets locked into that, with I-beams going across and then the V straps going down to support everything. This one was built to be able to move everything because Dennis wasn't sure, where he wanted to put the keel. So it was a very unique boat.
After 92, how long was it a competitive boat?
Well, that was it. They built the new ones in 95.
Right.
And then obviously lost and went to Bill Koch lost, or Dennis lost it, and then went to New Zealand for 2 years. And but at these boats, like if you take a look at that particular boat, 34, which is this one here, I'm sorry, not 34, 11. It was about 18 feet wide. And as the generations of America's Cup boats got further and further along, they started getting very narrow. So the 92 boats were about 18 feet wide. And by the time you got to 2007, they were about 12 feet wide. So the biggest concern with, what's out there is there's some rigs out there that potentially could work, but you've got to buy the entire program. For example, there's a Abracadabra and Stars and Stripes from another company, which was Next Level Sailing here in San Diego, got sold to a couple of guys in Chicago, which eventually that went under because they had some issues. And that Abracadabra was aluminum honeycomb core and was very soft in the deck, and it never got certified by the Coast Guard. So those 2 boats are sitting in a yard in Chicago at Crawley's Yard. And I'm not sure what the plan is for them, but I think Abracadabra was going to be sold for $100,000, but you had to take everything. So you can get the rig, but then you've got to make the adjustments to the boat as well. So there's a couple options. We've got a brand new X rig from the 2007 Cup. We've got the Abracadabra rig, and they also have this broken rig that's behind you right now. So each one has pluses and minuses, but to kind of make this a short story is you've got a rig that's a really good rig that we want to use, but it doesn't fit the boat. So the boat guys are like, change the rig, and the rig guys are like, change the boat. And each one costs, they're not cheap.
Now, this boat has lived as you rent it out, you can take rides on it, those kinds of things. So it's become a novelty to some extent to be able to go out and sail in the bay, which I think is pretty cool. If they fix it and get it where it's got to go, and you're looking somewhere around $300,000 to get this thing in the right place.
Yeah, and it's kind of the $300,000 is a pretty big number, and people are like, oh, that's not rig will be less than that. Well, the rig is less than that, but they also have a few other issues with the boat. So the rudder bearing right now, we can't get the rudder out. It's just locked in. We put a bar across the deck with a jack, and we tried to push I wasn't involved in this process, but they tried to jack it out, and that didn't work. So they have to go down to the boat every couple of days and turn the wheels just to keep the thing from freezing up. The other issue was in that keel, where you have here, that aluminum plate in the bottom is corroded. Right. So you've got carbon, an aluminum plate, carbon, the space for the box, and then carbon with the 4 holes that, 4 bolts that come through. So that aluminum plate has to be taken out. And that's, as you know, when you're talking about structural things on an America's Cup boat, it's not just let's throw a couple layers of carbon on. It's, that's a major repair. So you've got 3 big issues with this boat. And I think that's why the crew wanted to really, start this fundraiser.
As you can see behind me, maybe I'm pointing the wrong direction. You can see behind me, the boat snapped its mast, I think last August of 220, if I'm not mistaken. And I kind of did it, according to the report, it kind of did it. It was doing an attack and caught the wind and snapped the mast, right?
Well, they tacked over onto starboard, and because I heard from the crew, I wasn't on the boat when this happened as well, but it was a typical San Diego day, like 8 to 12, kind of out of 270, 280, and they were reaching up the bay on starboard tack, and all of a sudden, this happened like within seconds. They got about a 40-degree lift, and it built over 20, and so the boat started tipping over. And what happened was, because I was able to do the forensic sort of look after the fact that when they had the mast on the dock, and what happened was the spreader bar, the root that goes through the spreaders, is held up by you've got your cap shrouds, the spreader, and then the roots of the diagonals go into the bar with the headed rod going into the hanging off that bar. So the S1 on the port side, which would have been the leeward side of the boat, pulled right through that bar. When that happened, the rig went forward and it snapped right at the spreader. And as it came down basically straight down in line with the boat, hit the transom and broke in the second spot. So there's 3 pieces of this rig that's out there right now. So as it fell, it took out the S2 tip cup, the end of the S2 bent broke that all up and bent the rod. So there's all the rigging. They could probably replace or reuse some of the rigging that's on that one if they wanted to replace this one, but it's, that's, talking to Brad Fitzgerald, who's like an expert boat builder here in California. He's, it'd be a big job, let's say.
Okay. So as a charter boat, it had 15 good years of service, and roughly 3,000 rides, according to, again, some of the stuff that we were reading. So
Okay.
if we restore it, does it stay as a charter boat, or does it go to nonprofit? I mean, exactly what's going to happen if you do get it fixed?
I mean, their goal is to get it going as a charter boat again. The nice thing about that boat is it's Coast Guard approved, and they can take 25 passengers on it. Right now, they're just running Il Moro, and Il Moro is a uninspected vessel, but because it's over 100 tons, they can take 12 people out on that one.
Okay.
And so that one's on the sailUSA11.com website. And people have been going out on that all the time. And that, like I said, that boat's got the 2007 X rig in it. And the X rigs are just, from the 92 generation rigs, which were low modulus carbon, to the 2000 rigs, which became high modulus, and then a 3 rig and then a 7 rig, they just kept getting better and better. So, the guys that know these America's Cup boats say, hey, that 2007 rig is probably a no brainer to use that one. But now the problem is to fit it to the boat, which is the main big expense.
I wouldn't be using my journalistic chops if I didn't ask this question. You're asking for donations for nostalgia, and I get that, but for a for-profit company, in this particular case, the charter company that they own, I know they've been very good in San Diego, they've been good citizens, but is it, maybe can you address that a little bit?
Well, like I said, Lynn and B had nothing to do with this. This was a couple of guys in the crew that started it. I just saw it on Facebook and I shared it. So, I gave some money because I feel for the program, and I think Lynn and B are just great people. And but yeah, it's a for-profit thing.
No, I don't have anything wrong with that. I think it has to. You used to ask the question, which I think
Sure.
makes sense. It's a phenomenal boat, and the ones that are if you ever had a chance to be on any of those boats and charter them, it's you don't get a chance to walk on history very often.
Right.
And if you're
right.
a sailor, this is a big deal. I mean, this is a big deal. It really is. Where are they? Just out of curiosity, in San Diego Bay, is the charter? Where's their dock?
So it's on Shelter Island at the hotel called Kona Kai, which is at the end, the western end of Shelter Island. And that's where Il Moro's docked right now. Stars and Stripes is actually in a slip closer to Driscoll's, which is sort of, pretty close to there, but it's a lot closer to the owner's place that they live. So they come down on it, check it on it every day. And like I said, turn the wheels and stuff. But they run out of there. They've got a little shop right at the Kona Kai hotel there, and they sell merchandise. And, Dennis Conner has a bunch of artwork in there. And so they're selling things. And, it's a tough one because they want to get it going, but they also realize that, hey, this could be too much. And we might just, turn it into we'll put the stump in with the boom on and put a tarp on it and turn it into a, little booze cruise boat.
Well, if you look at the cost of a ride, I think it was around $59, if I'm not mistaken. And if you multiply 3,000 times that, it still doesn't. The expense on these boats is far greater than what people think about. It's not like fixing our own boats where you can buy something. It takes something very specific. Could you still race this boat if it were fixed up?
I'm sure. Yeah. It's got a perf rating. they don't fly the spinnakers anymore because these boats back in the day had poles and all S sails. So they don't really, they're not competitive. They have raced them in a few things out in Southern California, but competitively, no, it's just fun stuff that they do.
Well, listen, I appreciate the time. We will put up the Facebook and all of the information next to this as we get forward, and hopefully you'll have what's left or what's the start of a good winter out there. Enjoy yourself. And Mark, I can't tell you how much I appreciate talking to us.
Well, thanks, Greg. I appreciate you having me.
If you have any interest in helping out with Stars and Stripes, all that information will be up at the end of the show. I want to thank Mark for just taking a few minutes out and explaining a little bit about the program and trying to put Stars and Stripes, which has a phenomenal history with Dennis Conner and all the America's Cup adventures. So it'll be hopefully back on the water here fairly soon. If you have an interest, you can certainly find that information at the end of this, at the end of the show. I also want to thank JJ, Nate, and Carly for coming aboard from the University of Toledo. They're great representatives of student athletes in America. And I think they do Toledo and the area, especially North Cape Yacht Club, where they practice and where they sail out of during the regular competitive year. I think they do a great job, and it was really fun talking to them. So we'll see you next week with our finale, show 64 for season 2. We'll take a little bit of a hiatus, and we'll start back up middle of January. Get quite a bit on tap, we think, for next year to enjoy. So until we see you next time.